contract completion date is in August of next year. That's their firm date that they have to be done. For the highway department, the contractor expects to be done early, but of course a lot of that will just depend on how well construction goes. But those signals are under contract and will be done next year. Somebody have any questions about them? Or?
At that same time, we will be looking at the one on Stevenson, and we'll probably, if we can work it in there, we will have to redo that intersection also. Well, I'll say redo it, but
A minor modification.
Minor modification on the flower garden out there. So, and hopefully we can get all that done next year. So, but we didn't put a date on that. You notice you did not put any dates on that. So, it's all depending on weather.
And there's one more to be done after that, correct?
Bower.
Well, we've got Bower. We also have Spruce. We have Spruce, and then also Rock Springs and 43 are all in the queue with the highway department.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we'll be continuing this on up Main Street.
The one at Rock Springs is a major.
Yeah,
That'll be a big project anyway.
it's a big project. It includes adding some turning lanes and widening on those approaches to the intersection to allow more stacking for vehicles. Because, I mean, if any of you have driven through there during 5 o'clock, yeah, it backs up pretty bad on both 43 and Rock Springs.
That's in the highway department work, but that's also in the trust fund. So hopefully all that will be approved and we can work that too. I don't look for that to be next year anyway.
No, it will not, because in order to maximize the federal funding on these, we've got to stagger them. We've got to split them between the highway department's fiscal years. So we'll do basically one per fiscal year for the next 4 years, hopefully, as long as we can stay on the schedule.
Thank you, Wade. Does any of the other departments have any questions for any department? We'll move on down to the good of the meeting. Unless you want me to go through the roll call here. Is any of the anybody, I won't go through the whole roll call on that. Has anybody got, council people got any in their committee want to bring up anything? Okay, we'll move down into the resolution part, and you'll notice in front of you was put a sheet, 3 sheets of paper, and that is the budget. Now, I chicken scratched on that before I made copies, and so. But I think the budget presented to you before we went through a couple of 3 committee meetings was 60,000 deficit. That Luke had forgot somehow to put his proportion of building funds, building maintenance in his department. And those 3 sheets cover that. And that raised to the deficit to $63,009.47. The total overall budget, an $18,287,000 budget. We're going to, total budget, we're all right, $1,274,000 if you list all departments, hopefully will come in, but our general fund is $63,009.47 in the deficit. All the rest of them, other than the water and sewer fund, which we're transferring money from our infrastructure, that is shortfall of $4,000. The probation fund is a wash. So, any questions on the budget?
Did we ever confirm the amount that we were going to be, and I'm not using the correct terms, charging the departments for example, the fire department, the $21,000 for maintenance? Did we ever get an actual number on that? Because
That is the number.
That is the actual number. What else does that include?
Well, It's a long list of things with me, but Wade, would you know right off the top of your head, all the way from fuel service to maintenance to building expense to, what all's in that?
It's basically, the way the budget's set up right now, 4 different funds are contributing into the general fund to provide for us to have a maintenance shop and fueling station. It's the water fund, street fund, police fund, and fire fund. Police and fire, it's never been the case before because they've always been part of the general fund.
Okay.
And just to give you a breakdown,
But the other departments had their own separate fund before.
No, it came out.
Water-
It all came out of the general fund?
no.
Other than
They-
water.
Maintenance has been about 75 to 85% funded by water and street funds, traditionally, going back. And right now, the way it's set up, 72% is being funded by water and street. 68% in the 2016 budget is being funded by water and street funds, while 19% is police and 10% is fire.
On the fire trucks, Marvin, is there anything that we cannot do internally that has to be contracted out?
Yeah,
Like what?
all the pumps, the hydraulics on the ladder trucks, the ladder truck, man, we just got it back today. They take it to Conway for the air conditioning because they can't recover it, they can't raise it up, it's too big for anything in-house here.
Okay.
There's a lot that.
Oil and all that can be done in-house?
Yes, yes, oil, brakes,
Well, they've got which engine down there right now that they're
we
working
have
on?
got engine 3 down there that we're working on the water
What
pump.
pump?
Well, I wasn't able to come to the meetings that they had, and I wasn't 100% clear, and I apologize for not being able to
Oh,
call,
okay.
so, okay. That kind of answers my
Well,
question.
I have a follow-up question to that. Based on that number, I asked Luke, and I think he said you and him got together, Wade, so I don't know if you're the right person maybe to answer it, but where did you come up with the 20,000? I know it was based off of 10%, but year-to-date, the only thing that I know, well, I checked some numbers, and it looks like they have a little over $1,300 is all they've ever taken to the maintenance shop. So where did we come up with the $20,000 and are the 10% of their budget?
Those were just the best splits that we could come up with the information we have.
You know,
I would welcome in future budgets, and I'll go ahead and make this perfectly clear, take a look at these splits, because I've already done the numbers, and water and street are overpaying. So the more we adjust these, the more it benefits my fund.
So if they don't use the money, does it stay in that fund for?
No, they lost it.
Essentially what happens, this is an allocation of, if you took anything that you want a zero sum for the shop. In other words, if we were going to say this shop is independent of the city operation, how much would it charge to have its business? So, as he said, water or street and sewer taking 68% of it, and that's a simple allocation. But that allocation is for workers' comp for those employees. Any charge to an expense item, so you're taking the total budget down there, not just what work they're doing, so like not just the oil, but the utilities, anything that runs through there to have that shop in operation, and saying, here's the allocation to have that for each of these other departments.
But I guess the problem with that is that if all they're using it because of their vehicles for the main part can only be used for oil changes, it doesn't make sense to take 10% of their budget to put back towards that on the fire engine when they could, for the same price, go down to the road to one of our local businesses.
It's not 10% of the budget.
That's what Luke said. Luke said it was 10%.
It's 10% of the maintenance shops.
Of the maintenance
Okay,
shop.
well,
Yeah.
and I realize that even when they pay in, 33% goes back into the general fund based on the numbers, but that still leaves 14,000, which doesn't clarify what they're spending right now into that fund.
It just explained, it covered a lot of different things. It's the total operation of that shop.
So if
They
say
only use
the
30.
brush truck is taken up to the maintenance shop and they're changing the oil on it, the fire department is paying for that individual's workers' comp, insurance, blah, 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 to do the work on that vehicle.
They spent actually a little over 1,400 in materials and parts. That does not include labor. There's no billing for labor.
Right.
And I realize that, but But again,
I understand what you're saying, we could, they're just
it's still,
13.
it's still off, way
Yeah.
off.
Well, like I say, let's assume, for example, the dispenser out there on the fuel line goes out. They have to replace it. That dispenser is gonna be roughly about $10,000. So essentially, every department would have to pay their portion of that.
But their parts actually come out of a different fund than that.
It does.
I understand that, but not parts for like that pump.
Not for that,
Or-
maintenance.
You know, if the fence down there is torn down, or, you know, whatever it is, you're looking at what does it cost the Public Works to have that shop down there? And regardless of what service they're providing to a different department, they're getting billed for all of that, just not the work they're doing. So any expense that hits that, you know, shop expense, that what it costs to have that shop in operation, they're splitting that total amount of that cost up back on those allocations.
But based on that understanding, is it worth it to have a shop? Is it is it costing us more to have the shop from each department than it is to actually have the shop than to go up the road and use someone else?
So that's a different discussion, to be honest. You've got the expense there now. How are you going to allocate it out? Now, if we decide to outsource all of that, it might be cheaper.
It sounds like it would be based on these numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would. This is what I asked. I asked Luke this. I said, what I'd like to do is get the any work that we do have done outside. We don't want to do it on the inside because we'll have those numbers. But any work that we have done outside, I'd like for Luke and I to sit down and review it and get an idea of whether that can be done in-house and whether that would affect those allocations. In other words, if we can't use the city shop for that stuff, there might be a redistribution of that allocation. So they might, for example, fire, you said what's fire now?
The way the 2016 budget has it at 10%.
10%. So what if we get to it and say, well, really they're only using it for about 8%. If we really look at this, is that 2%, does that need to be reallocated? Now, as Wade said, if he actually looks at and runs the numbers from his side,
I've already started doing that.
he's going to tell you that, hey, let's redo them. I'll only have to pay 60 to the 68%.
55.
55.
Police and general fund will get hit hard if we shift that percentage.
And all of that, my experience in accounting over the years, I had one company I worked for that they had a shop that they broke even on, and they allocated it out. And they said, well, we're breaking even every period and every quarter. It's not, we can outsource this and we save labor and some other items on it, the administration of that shop. And immediately when we outsourced it on 100 tractors, roughly about 300 trailers, they noticed that our expense for tractors and trailers repair went way up.
And that would make sense on that, but the problem is that most of the vehicles like the fire department have, they can't even work on at the shop. They have to outsource anyway, which they don't pay out of this budget. It comes out of a whole different other fund.
Exactly.
So it does, so that isn't. So I think in our case that isn't necessarily fit. Between the police and fire, it's $60,000.
Right.
And I don't think that the cost that they're spending on their vehicles is justifying that cost out of those funds. I understand what y'all are saying first that it pays for, but it sounds to me like if it's that much overhead to keep a shop running, then is it beneficial to the city to have that, or is it costing the city more to have that open?
And again, that's something that we'll have to look at to make sure. I believe that is true with the numbers that Luke and I have discussed.
$210,000 in that shop.
Right.
If the money's pulled out and it's not used, the police and fire lose that money. If they pull the 60,000 out
Yeah,
for this fund
they won't get it
and
back
it's not used, they don't get it back.
No.
No, it goes into the general.
because it's paying for their workers' comp and everything else. It's for the operation of the shop. It's not even going toward the parts of it. It's going to take care of the employees. And I get that. I understand why they're doing that percentage. The problem is that it just doesn't make sense cost-wise for.
The only thing I can understand is they would be charged labor if we outsourced it, and they're not adding labor into this, but that's the only thing I understand.
we're only adding a total cost factor into this. And that includes labor.
I still think that's a little steep. But
The incremental part, if it is steep, it may be. Of course, there again, we just heard Wade say that he's using it actually 55% of the expense.
how does this affect the way the tax was written when it was voted in?
It does not.
It doesn't affect
No, it does
it
not.
at all?
At all.
You guarantee it?
Yes.
It's not going
Well,
to cause any problems?
this has
Yes.
been approved by the legislative body.
And this is no different than the mayor allocating for this building maintenance. Same concept. The mayor decided, Luke's department downstairs has more floor space than administration. He wasn't being charged anything for building maintenance, now he is. What are those percentages?
40, 40, 20.
Yeah.
And it's 40% to the police department, 40% to the county, and guess who gets the 20?
You do.
Well,
Well-
work that out first. But anyway, it is allocated on space.
And I'm not even saying that these allocations are correct. What I'm saying is the net effect, the incremental amount, let's say that they're off. Over, the total is what,
$60, let's get for this.
$60,000.
Yeah.
Let's say that it's, when we get down to it, that those allocations, if we do an analysis, it should be $51,000. So we're $9,000 off on a fire and police budget of,
$2 million.
$3.5 million. So I'm not saying it should be allocated that way. I'm saying I don't have any problem with the allocation in initially looking at it after talking with Luke. But it's something that I brought to his attention when I originally saw the line items, that they weren't in last year's budget, they were in this year. And then I went through and said, well, we're going to have to monitor this and see indeed if these things are accurate. Because I will agree, if fire trucks are going down there for an $800 oil change, that's an issue. But there's more down there than just oil change.
But most of the things they can service, and I mean, that's the problem, is that right now for the main part, and I asked for some numbers, so it looks like it's mainly, that's all they're paying for in there, is oil change.
Oil change on 5 vehicles or whatever. And like, that's why I say, rather than, I told Luke, I said, I'd like to see what we're having done down there. I'd like to get an idea and then monitor this, especially those outside, and during one of our discussions, those outside costs. As the mayor said, Chief Woodruff said that sometimes they'll take a vehicle down there and they'll say, well, we can't service it because it has to be hooked up to Ford's computer. If it's a Ford vehicle or Dodge if it's one of the other police cars. If we can't get that service in our own house, we're going to have to look to see how we can. If we need to buy a piece of equipment or whatever.
And that's the problem is right now when they can't get service, they're paying this now, and then on top of that, they're still paying to send it out. And we've got some new fire trucks that are coming in that are going to be under warranty. They're not going to have those same issues, and it's just a lot to overtake.
Well, it's certainly an issue for council, and it's been brought up. And again, I brought it up initially before anybody else questioned it. I trust Luke in that he's giving me what the allocations that he's been told are accurate, and now the responsibility will be to monitor it and see if it is. Again, this can be amended. This budget can be amended if we get into June and we say, hey, these allocations are incorrect. We just amend that and change it. But it's something that, again, I'm going to monitor it. And I told Luke, I said, he and I are going to sit down on a regular basis, and not that they're going to need to do extra work to put it together, but if we're having between now and middle of budget year, we have just a couple of items down there, yeah, the allocations are off. But again, every time they get fuel, there should be some cost associated with that. And I'm not talking about the fuel costs, I'm talking about the the canopy down there, cover the dispenser aisle and falls down. He should get 68%, he should get 10, he should get the balance, if they're gonna be using the shop. And I agree with that allocation. I've done these in every walk of life I've been with from a business standpoint. No one is ever happy. Like when you tell Department X, your insurance cost, your insurance allocation is this. And I said, wow, you know, how did you base that on? We based it on claims. Number or dollar amount? We based it on dollar amount. Well, I only had 3 claims, which are large claims.
Well, I don't expect everybody to be happy with every line item. The argument, and I think you're aware of it, I think the argument is that I don't know, is the shop's cost justifiable across the board for our city? And it's not looking that way based on the numbers that I'm seeing, but I don't know all the numbers. I just know a few.
Well, and I don't have all the numbers either, and that's why I told them, I said, you know, the initial allocation is based on assumptions. There's nothing in black and white. So we're literally saying, okay, asking people, what do you think? And making an allocation based on that.
So where did the assumptions come from?
Wade and his staff.
A lot of it was based off of what the typical percentages that Water and Street have been paying in versus what the general fund have been paying in. Or not paying in, but it has just been left to be part of the general fund. See, this isn't new money. I mean, this isn't new expense. This is just being allocated differently.
Allocation.
Because there never was a police fund or a fire fund. And just to clarify the numbers, Water and Street are paying in $143,000. Water's paying another paying 55% of the accounting department's budget.
It goes back to this, and I don't know that you have the answers today, but I think this is the answers that we're going to need in the near future. Do you think that the shop is making money or costing the city more money?
I think the shop is worth the cost.
But
Because-
based on what? I mean,
Based off the fact that we have mechanics that we can control to get the stuff done.
Okay, and I understand that we have mechanics and they can do the job, but based on what's able to get fixed across the board, because the question is not just for us, it's not just what does the shop cost to operate, it's what does the shop cost to operate plus what we're spending out on vehicles that we're sending off to other places because they can't do that job, because they're not equipped to do that job, and so on. Taking all those figures in and then basing, or because we're having to send so many out, is this worth it?
Well, okay, let's take alignments. We can't do alignments. Right? To purchase the equipment in order to do that, we're looking at $30,000 for a, what, $40 to $60 item that we do maybe 10 times a year. So, no, it's not worth it to be able to do some of those specialty things. If we've got to flip rotors, it's not worth the cost to buy a brake blade and all the accessories that come with it. But as far as when something's broke down and we need somebody to go work on it, we've got them there. They go work on it. These guys also work 24 hours during overnight. And if a police car has a problem, they'll help. If it's one of our guys that are pushing snow, they're there to help. So it's hard to put it just, does it pay off dollar for dollar?
It's hard to put it in a building.
It's kind of hard to try and make that straight comparison.
This came up late in the budget discussion, and that's why to challenge the assumptions that were presented in the budget are difficult. We can do that. I don't have any problem asking the question. I think that this is again what I told Luke, I would like to see not a job sheet or anything like that, but I said I'd like to see how many times that we engage the shop to do work for both the police and the fire department, and then take those items and say, okay, just not if the cost of that can be done outside, because once you've made the commitment that you have a shop, everybody's going to have to kick in their portion. Now, if, for example, I assume that even if we took police and fire completely out and had everything outsourced, that it would, from Wade's standpoint, he might not decide to keep the shop. Probably would, but it might not pay off because he basically has police and fire subsidizing that. Now, to his point, he says that he's actually subsidizing police and fire right now, based on the total cost. But we don't know, we don't have any time that they're spending on vehicles. We don't have anything, like I say, for me to challenge those allocations. So when it first came up, I said, what did you use as the basis of this? That's what we were hoping to get from Luke the other day when we asked him, how did you come up with these allocations? And he hasn't given us that yet. But again, my goal in this is once we get something that's concrete, we'll just monitor it and see. And if we have to change those budget amounts, those budget allocations, we'll just adjust the budget at that time. Amend it.
Now, we've implemented a fleet maintenance software down there. So we are now starting to track this to build the data. And Ms. Krager and I discussed that quite a bit yesterday. In time, we will have it. Right now, we have about 10 months, 10 to 11 months of good data to look back as far as the maintenance that's being performed on various vehicles and various departments. Now, we've got good historical data on what percentage usage of the fueling station between the different funds. We've got pretty hard data right now just as far as the number of different vehicles that can come through that maintenance shop per fund. But as far as full equipment, no, we don't have that yet. They've never tracked that. That's why we implemented the software to start tracking it, to make it to where that data is accessible.
Well, I'm going to say something that's probably not going to make very many people in this room happy, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't have a problem with the money, and I don't have a problem with spending it. I have a problem with the rest of it going into the general fund.
If it's not used.
If it's not used, let it go
I
back
have
to
that-
those departments.
I
That's
addressed
just my
this
opinion.
in our meeting.
It's what the tax was passed for, not for the money to go back to the general fund. I don't have a problem with allocating the expenses out. I really don't. But I do have a big problem with it going back to the general fund if it's not used. And that's all I'm going to say.
I had questioned those line items quite extensively because when I saw the amount of those,
As long as it's a correct amount, I don't have a problem with it.
but
Let
rolling
them
in,
charge them what they're supposed to charge for whatever they need to charge them for, all of the departments. But let it go back to that department if it's not used.
well, I inquired about the labor cost of doing any of the repair work, maintenance, and there is not. Wade also told me that they only charge for parts. And
Well, average
because I've
shop,
discussed this with several people, they're tired of seeing me show up.
average shop cost for labor in this town is anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour. Because I've checked. So,
Wade, would you like to respond to that?
There's not going to be any money left on the table because you're not putting that money in an account for you to draw from. The funds are divided up to cover the operational overhead of the shop. Not
you just said that if the money's not all used up, what's left is going into the general fund? Is that not what was just said a little bit ago?
Nothing, essentially, it's not that it goes back into the general fund. It's taken out before anything's ever done. It's just a reallocation of funds. The best way of saying this is if we wanted to get it to $1, to know exactly, what Wade would have to do is set up the shop, city shop, as a standalone business. And he would have to bill each individual department every time they had an expense. And at the end of the year, we could tell if indeed that, was to that amount, say $20,000 or whatever. Now, the best thing for the departments to do is this. You're allocated this amount of this cost. Try and minimize the stuff that you do outsource to the best of your ability, because that does hit a budget line and get taken out. I mean, it applies to your budget immediately. This is simply a reallocation. In other words, this is Wade saying, hey, I've been paying 100% of this, and we set these other guys up on their own, and I don't get any, when they come down to the shop, I'm not getting any benefit from that. I'm essentially doing the work for the police and fire when I do an oil change.
But I'm not having a problem with charging each of the departments
I understand.
that. What I have a problem with is what I heard a little bit ago, that somebody said that if the money's not all used, it goes back into the general fund. That's my issue.
Yes.
Using the money is not an issue with me.
I understand that. And it's not, from a budget standpoint, it's not money that can be taken back. I mean, we could, by amending the budget, we essentially could. And that's what I was talking about. We could amend the budget in June and back up and say, hey, you know what, this 10% allocation is not accurate. It needs to be 5%. But again, what you're doing, and there's a difference of looking at it. It's difficult to explain it in a way that's easy to understand. That shop's going to be there. The city's decided. Everybody has to pay. And before we get started, we're saying, here's your fair share. Now we just got to make sure that that fair share is correct. And I agree with you 100%. I don't want that money taken out. I don't want it allocated if indeed that money, if it's over by $10,000 and it cuts the police or fire by $10,000 that's in their budget, it shouldn't be cut. But we don't have any concrete figures right now. This came up in the last month of this budget preparation, and when it did, I immediately said, what are these? They weren't in last year's budget. Well, we've reallocated this. Based on what? Well, it was a percentage, and that's when in one of our informal meetings, I said, we just need to get those percentages.
We'll have some concrete, we'll probably, I'm gonna say within 6 months, we'll have concrete data, probably.
I just have a feeling we're going to get a lot of backlash because the general population is going to say, well, they're taking money from the police and fire, like they said, you know. I'm just speculating.
I understand that, and I've heard that same thing. And as long as it's like with anything else, as long as it's an informed answer or an informed question, I don't have any problem with it. And in fact, I welcome questions like this because it's transparent and the public knows that we're taking money and putting it in the right places.
And as long as we can show them that it's not going where it's not supposed to go,
Right.
you know, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I don't have a problem with that part of it.
Yeah.
As long as we can let everybody out there know that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing based on the tax that was passed for the police and fire.
Well, and again, I can understand everybody's concern, and even those individuals that look at it from the standpoint of, I completely separated the tax and the police and fire fund out. But I look at this in a different way. I look at this as purely economic analysis. You know, when I said, well, that makes sense. You're reallocating it if they're actually using it because they weren't before. Now they've got their own fund. Before they were part of the general fund. That makes sense. And then we started asking the question, well, what are these based on? Based on some sort of labor rate? Is it based on number of times that you get down there? Is it based on just what you could get the services for outside? So the main thing is now is just to track it and monitor it and then adjust the budget accordingly. And this is something that's not going to be forgotten. That's going to be in the line item next year too. So as we start budget preparation for next, if we do the same thing and we start in June, we say, hey, not only are we amending this budget, we need to make sure that we do that for the next budget as well.
Then, based on questions you've asked, Mitch, you know, they said this was taken out of last year, but just wasn't as noticeable because there wasn't a separated fund. Well, where was that shown? Do we know where those numbers were and how they figured that in?
Like I say, they weren't in it. This is a new line item, so it didn't exist. That was just part of the service this is a completely new charge for police and fire.
Okay, but I guess I'm just still trying to understand all this. So if everything,
It was in the general fund.
Okay.
It come out of the general fund last year.
okay,
The total come out of the general fund, the $200,290 came out of the general fund.
And
Okay,
but
guess what? That general fund last year was police and fire and dispatch and all the other departments that are still there. It still came out of that general fund.
I understand that. My question is that even the police and fire was all in the general fund, but they were separated line items out in the general fund. Is that correct?
Because the police and fire were in the general fund. They're not. They're only getting an allocation this year.
Or were they separated out in the general fund, like as far as?
Last year, no.
No.
So there's no way to track, fire did this number down there,
No.
police did this number down there?
We have some of that. We started.
We're building
Yeah.
that. There, you can't do a line item to transfer from one general fund department to another general fund. That's why there's never been a line, because it's all, if they're general fund departments, it's the same pool of money. But this is
We're
no
also
different.
getting us confused of looking at individual tasks that are performed. This is not an oil change that previously came out of the general fund and now is being charged back to police or fire and revenue coming into the general fund. This is, okay, what does it cost us to operate this shop?
And I get that. I don't think I'm confused with that. I think my what I'm still confused on is how somehow this got hit.
How did they create the exemptions?
Because what it shows is that they've always been charged for this. Is kind of the statement, where the broad statement that's been made today, is that they've always been charged for this, but yet you can't go back and show where they've always been charged for this. You just say, I mean, you say it's in the general fund. I get that, but how do we know that those? That's just what I'm trying to still wrap my head around.
I guess because
Where did this come from? Just somewhere in the blue, the general fund?
no, the mayor and Luke and
No, I'm
Mike-
talking about where in the general fund did they come up with? Yeah, because
Since we divided it out,
so what was it charged to in the general ledger then of last year, 2014?
look it up. I don't know all those numbers. You got the history without Luke here.
I know, and
Not a line item person.
And I realize that. I just want to, but I want to know what we vote, what we're voting for, and I want to understand,
Wait, how have you going to figure it out that yours should be 55% instead of 68%?
Off of the 10 months of data that we've been able to collect since we've been starting our two systems. I got 3 metrics that I'm looking at. The amount of money that's been spent on parts and materials on vehicles for different funds. The total number of pieces of equipment, vehicles that are being maintained by that shop, split by the different funds, as well as the utilization of the fueling station. Those are 3 things that I could easily track and put together in a short amount of time. Based off of those, water and street are at 55.36% utilization of that shop. They're currently being charged in the budget 68%. I combine them because I make them split that evenly since they do share equipment. And it kind of stops the bickering in between the 2 departments. And since I have control over that, I do it.
That's how it's set up.
The general fund is utilizing 16% based off of 10 months of data.
It's set up totally.
Police fund is at 26.3%. Fire fund, through the first 10 months, is only at 3.5%. Or, I'm sorry, let me get back up here. 1.5%. Now, as I told Mary Jean yesterday, that number is going to change since we've got an engine torn apart in the back of the shop. And then there's a few other departments. There's parks, there's housing, there's CDB that utilize that shop and that fuel station. So, like I said, as the numbers come out, it's going to hurt police and general fund the most as far as the maintenance shop is. This budget has been set up by past councils this way, with water and street contributing as much as they have. And I'll just go ahead and say it, to prop up the general fund. Those 2 funds have overpaid for many, many years. As of right now, in the 2016 budget, water and street are paying in a total of $481,000 in transfers into the general fund. That's for maintenance, safety, and accounting. Water is the only fund that pays into accounting. No other department or fund contributes to that accounting department that handles payroll and HR for every department in the city. So I'm afraid we're losing sight of the bigger picture.
I'm trying to find the light item you're referring to, I couldn't find it yet.
No, he gave you this, but it doesn't really come.
Well, we've never had a breakdown of how, I'll tell you, we've never had a breakdown of the water going in there.
That's a line item.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about how much time you actually, when they come in and get something worked on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's what.
And how much,
we
when they pulled in there, how much time we spent on theirs or what we did, but we've never had that before, believe it or not. Well, we're gonna start.
When they take a vehicle down there to be repaired, and Wade will, at what, are you going to send them an itemized, like parts and stuff monthly or what for a total?
Well, they
problem?
get the invoice on the parts and materials they use so that it can be appropriated out from the correct budget.
We never send out labor costs,
I know that Wade
maintenance, all that stuff.
Will we start getting
explained
labor costs?
because I questioned what the labor
That wasn't the
was
problem.
about.
It wasn't in the plan.
I mean, we've got all kinds of options.
Yeah.
I mean, the departments that don't want to participate can do their own thing. And then if they need us, we'll just do
Put
shop
'em at,
rates.
I'd put them at the back burner, I guess.
Well, no, and that's not what I'm saying, but it's just, I mean, there's a lot of options, but we're trying to stay consistent with the way we've done this and the way this budget has been built in the past.
Actually, we're not. We're more concerned about protecting the police and fire fund to make sure we're not spending that money incorrectly. Let's just get
That's
Jason
what-
talk about it.
Exactly.
The
That
same-
is what this issue
the
is.
same-
That's not what we're discussing. We got two things going on here. One is we're concerned as an organization to make sure that we protect that sales tax. That's the top of the list. Whether you want to say it or not, just call it the way it is. Okay? That's what you're trying to protect. Bottom line. The flip side of this is, in regards to that, is that in the process of trying to protect this, we're also losing sight of the responsibility of one department carrying the entire load in regards to maintenance for the entire city of Harrison. I don't know whether the numbers are right. That's not what my point is. My point is this, is we've lost sight of what we're trying to do. If we're that worried about protecting and making sure that money that has been set aside for police and fire is not what that sales tax was to be used for, then we need to iron that out. We need to cut to the chase and get down to what we need to talk about. Don't beat around the bush. Don't look for excuses, because that's what this is all about.
But we have no, right now, we have
I
nothing.
understand that. I understand that. But this is what we're jimmering around here. Is we're going around the table, and Brian's confused and Dean's confused. But the bottom line is they're more concerned about protecting the sales tax. That's the bottom line. They want to make sure that sales tax is being protected. Okay? Got no issue with that. At the same time, though, we're also in the ability to, we got a city shop sitting here that whether it's being used properly or not being used properly, I don't know. But what I am hearing is we got a city shop here that is being used by all entities within the city of Harrison, but they have been picking up the tab on police and fire, and I use those because of the sales tax involved. Police and fire use them also, but didn't get charged for their utilization. What it amounts to is we're distributing the wealth. Everybody is supposed to be carrying their own weight. So you think of it like this. You have a big pile of money, and you've got 55% of that money is contributed to by water and sewer or the shop or whatever you want to call it. 10% is contributed to by fire or utilized by fire. 19% is utilized by police. These numbers have not been pulled out of somebody's backside to determine that we're trying to blow money or spend money illegally. There's been a lot of time put into this to make sure that this is what is being done. At the same time, they are sharing the wealth in that fire department's picking up their piece, Police department picking up their piece, yes, new line item, yes, change of way of doing business. No issue with that. It is different. And I would raise questions too, and we did talk about this. And I know you guys weren't here, that's not my point. We need to either ask ourselves, one, are we spending this money correctly? Or two, what do we do with the shop? That's it. There is nothing else. One, do we spend it correctly? Or two, what do we do with the shop? Because what's happening is you're reallocating, you hear this comment of reallocation of money. What they did was they were carrying the load for everybody in the city of Harrison. Now they carry their fair share in a line item, and so does everybody else. Are we saying the percentage is right? Right now, we're going with the best data we have.
Just an estimate.
That's exactly right.
that's all
We're going with
it
the
is.
best information we have. If you cannot look at this, okay, and go 6 months from now, because we're trying to balance the load, 6 months from now we come back and we look at this again very skeptically. Don't look at it with these on, trying to protect the sales tax. Open it up and say, are we using the shop correctly? If we come back 6 months and say, no, we're not. Police and fire are using it more. They don't want to hear that, okay? Police and fire are using it more. The percentages go up, police and fire. The shop, water and sewer department's using it less. Percentages come down. You see where I'm going to? The allocation money probably has not changed from last year to this year. It's just the wealth has been distributed. And so now instead of one unit carrying the whole load, which was the shop, now everybody's participating. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I think it's a little oversimplified, and the reason why I say that is because
It's
Yes,
that
it-
simple. It's
hang
that
on,
simple.
here-
It's that simple
It-
of a problem.
It is partly protecting the sales tax. It is partly trying to figure out things. I think the deal is that the more transparent we come, which is good,
Understand.
the more transparent, the more issues that we notice that weren't noticed before. This is evidently an issue that should have been tracked a long time ago. We just didn't know it until we started becoming more transparent. I think that raises my questions. It causes me not to know. And yes, you guys were a part of the conversation. You're on the budget committee. I'm not. I don't get to be a part of all these. And the budget's changed multiple times. I've looked over it here and there. And as these things come up, I think that's what causes questions. And I do need clarity in trying to figure all these answers out and trying to do stuff like that. It is, but it's just to simplify and say that all this discussion is just that. It's trying to understand in a amount of the time that we're just now getting it to be able to look at it, be able to study it this much and see these things.
Brian, I don't think that's true. I think you had that budget in front of you. You know, I hate to get upset about it, but that budget's been there several months.
But these particular
Yeah,
items. could change.
those, even those were in there.
Yeah, but they weren't brought to the attention.
That's right, that's right.
They didn't come under scrutiny until we got everything back.
I'm saying that budget's been out there for quite a while.
Right.
Has it not?
It's been out there, there's been changes.
Yeah, but we haven't changed this side,
I know it. But I would disagree with you there, Dan, or Mr. Mayor, because I just brought it to Luke's attention whenever. And they rely on the budget committee and myself to make sure that there's transparency.
But where I'm coming from is, and I said this at the first of the year, Wade is on duty all the time. Luke is on duty all the time. The fire chiefs are on duty all the time. I'm here all the time. Jeff is here. Luke is here. Van is here. Ask us questions, folks. Ask us questions. That's what we want.
Well, and we're asking.
Yeah.
Now, to Bill's point, and there seems to be, and maybe I've underestimated this, that I don't look at this as protecting the police and fire tax, because I'm going to do that. If I saw anything that I thought was wrong, I would not only speak out, but I would let everybody here know. I trust Wade when he tells me, because I don't know what the percentage are. And I trust Luke when he tells me this is how we did it. Now, again, I'm going to monitor this with Luke on the council's behalf to make sure that that's right. And I haven't met with Chief Woodruff, but I actually met with Chief Holt to go over this and say, do you know what these line items are? And he said, well, I understand this. And I said, well, we'll take a look at it and make sure we may have to amend the budget for those allocations. But given what limited information we have that's in black and white, and that's my problem with it is, I don't mind saying, okay, we're going to allocate it to this. The 40-40-20 split he literally just pulled that out.
Yeah.
I mean, he just said, and I asked, was it based on square footage? Was it based on
It's kind of we didn't take a tape measure, I'll tell you that.
right. So he's telling me
Yeah.
it's 40-40-20. Nobody challenged that allocation. All we challenged was the city shop. That allocation we didn't challenge. So, but I am going to continue to look at this. But I think as far as whether these amounts are right, let's say that total is off 40%, 30%, whatever. In the amount of those budgets, it's not a lot of money. But it does need to be as close to the penny as we can get it, since it's police and fire and that tax is involved. So, and again, I don't have a problem. That's a good thing about this council. We ask critical questions, and we get the right information out to the public. So I would ask this of council. Are we actually concerned about these allocations to the point that we wouldn't want to pass this budget? Do we want more information before we get there? Chief?
Thank you. I know I haven't been asked, but I'm going to throw it out there. I believe we have to pay our share, no matter what it is. Me and the mayor sat down with the budget. We have to start with a figure somewhere. This is a figure that we had was $40,000. As the year goes on, next budget time, we'll look at it, and if we need to make a change either way, I believe we'll make that change. If we find we're not getting the work, and the decision's made to move our vehicle somewhere else, then we'll do that. But let us all work together. I don't have a problem with it if anyone's held up because of the figure on the police side. We have to start somewhere, and I think we have to pay something, and I'm willing to look at it, because if we're not paying what's correct, either too low or too high, we can adjust that. So, and that's just from my department.
That was my question to both
So,
of you.
right.
At the
We have to start somewhere. That's only me.
Can you live with it? Because I've questioned the amount on those line items. And I've gone to Luke, I went to Mitch, because I was involved in that initial question and answer deal, and I could not understand, and I'm looking and I'm seeing $60,000, and we've got $15,000 between the two departments here for safety. And then I did discuss this with Wade, because I just felt that the numbers were exorbitant, and then considering that, how many new vehicles do you have, Chief?
I got 14, maybe 15. But I have 40 vehicles.
I know you
total.
have 40 vehicles, and you've got 5 that you don't use that much. But then you've got the others, you've got 20-some odd vehicles that are out there that are older vehicles that's going to have repair. But like you said, the newer ones, you'll have to take them, that have to be outsourced.
Well, under warranty. But like I said, we have to start with a figure somewhere, and what's that figure? I don't think anyone in this room really knows. So if you're asking mine, I'm happy with my $40,000 for now, because we'll look at it and adjust as we need to. And I think it's the fairest way. I'm not speaking for the fire department. I'm only speaking.
I do not have a problem paying for what we use. I mean, like we said, I don't have a problem with that.
The problem that I have is that if you don't use that money, then it rolls into the general fund.
But this is where we have the opposite. We amend the budget to fix the situation. And that's the critical piece we're forgetting about. This can be fixed. All right. This is a guesstimation, which quite literally it is, to start somewhere. And I understand you want to protect the money, so it goes back to fire, goes back to police. That's where you can amend the budget 6 months down the line. We'll have over a year and a half of data by that time to be able to look back at it and go, are we right or are we not right?
Well, there's, and again, I understand the questions, and like some of the line items, like safety, I actually disagree with the allocation on. I haven't said that to this point. I would vote to change that allocation, but I'm not going to change them line by line. It ought to be by budget. Now, I'll tell you, not to put the chief oath on the spot, but my initial conversation with him, you read people when you point stuff out, he didn't like his allocation when he first read it. He may be happy with them right now, and he may say in the future, we should have kept my mouth shut, but his first reaction was he didn't like them when I asked him. That doesn't change the fact that somebody had to go from somewhere, and the best source that I assume that the city had at the time was Wade. And I trust him to be giving us accurate figures to his, the most that he can, the best he can. So I'm happy with the figures as presented, like I say, given that we're going to monitor them for the next 3 to 6 months and make sure that indeed it is. But we're not talking about individual work items. Just make sure everybody understands that. And if for example, just take the fire, for example, if we decided, well, they're not going to use the city shop anymore, the allocation would go up for police, it would go up for water and sewer, and it might end up costing more in the long run. When you have a service station or a shop, you're spreading that cost over all your customers. We have fewer customers here, we're spreading that cost over. And we're hoping, to Wade's point, he said one of the things is having the control. Is that control worth a 10% premium in price? That'll be something later for us to decide.
But the ultimate constant in this question is that building requires $210,000 to operate in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And how you derive that $210,000.
Who's going to split the share? Who's going to split the wealth? And how do they split it?
Wayne did a very good job of explaining it to me yesterday, which I've been very outspoken about. I felt that the amounts were inflated, but Wade, I made a lot of.
They may be inflated, but they're an estimate right now.
Yes.
As such, they are estimates.
And
But you're liable to see the balloon going the other direction. That's, the balloon can, wind can blow in 2 different directions.
You're asking the same questions I asked 4.5 years ago about water and street funds, which they are two protected funds, just like the fire and police.
I just want to make sure that the tax that was passed is utilized the way it was passed.
Agreed.
I get the allocation. I totally get it. And I don't have a problem with that, especially now that I know that these two gentlemen don't have an issue with it. Not the problem. My big issue is, are we utilizing the tax the way it was voted in, and it's not being snuck in somewhere that it shouldn't be snuck? That's all I'm saying.
No sneaking going on.
Better not be.
There's no sneaking.
All right. I'm done.
With that, I would like to make a motion that we approve the budget resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve budget resolution. Do you have that resolution? Did you give that in front of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That being said, do we have further discussion? Do we have any further discussion? Okay. That being said, also, all those in favor, being the resolution by aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same.
Aye.
Call roll, please.
Bill Boswell.
Aye.
Joe Williams.
Aye.
Dina Taylor.
No.
Brian Herring.
Yes.
Mary Jean Krieger.
With reservations, yes.
Mitch Magnus.
Yes.
Johnny Savage.
Yes.
Brian Oswald.
Yes.
7 to 1.
Motion 7-1. Motion passes. Okay, that being said, thank you all very much. I know we got a little heated there, and it's hard, but that's what it's all about. And,
If you think that's heated, you ought to come to my house.
anyway, we'll move forward. That's what we want. Okay. We talked about the rush main signal. Okay, I will move in a little bit for information only on inland. Y'all do know that the city did send a letter to them, and we received a reply from that. Did anybody pick that up from my office on the reply? Okay. Okay, we're also now, Dan, don't step on me now, thinking down the line. We're going to reply to their reply. There's still some ongoing issues with inland. They are working on their end of it, and we are working on our end of it. We had a finance meeting yesterday, and it's strictly a finance meeting. We didn't deal much in service or anything like that. And we're going to get to the bottom of their end of it, saying the city owes them X amount of dollars. Okay, this all started when inland started actually. And we've had two different sets of books, and neither one of them balanced. But believe you me, Luke has been hot and heavy, worried and sweating and everything else the last couple of weeks, and he's on vacation right now, so don't anybody bother him. Inland is going to revisit their end of it, and city is working on their end of it, and we will reach a solution that's going to be, I think, pretty good. But that being the finance part of it, there's still some things that the city's going to work on with inland other than, well, we're going to work with finances, but other things too. That's kind of where we stand with inland right now. Did I say that all right, Ben?
Do we have any rough idea how much the city owes?
Well,
I
I
saw in
don't know
the paper
anything, let's put it that way.
400,000.
That, if, you got to understand how they started off, I think the first month, I don't have that in front of me, they said that we underpaid them $23,000 actually the first month that they picked up trash. According to their bill.
But are they basing that on the fact of the number of cans they have out plus the number of commercial?
But
Whether they pick up or not.
okay, how it started is
There's a point to my question.
Yeah.
My neighbors have, I have a house that's next to me that's empty. Those two cans have sat there for a year, never moved. But they've got data numbers on the side of them.
Okay, now it depends on the water source.
I don't know.
If the water's on, yes, they're being charged. Yes. But it all stems not really on the residential end of it. It's all for the commercial. And they took the last service company that serviced Harrison. They took their. Oh, okay. I wasn't going to say that, but you said it. But anyway, they took their pickup log and used it, but we still used our building log. And it never was right to begin with. So we're having to work through it. Inland's actually going to have an internal audit. They are going to, and we'll probably know a lot more 20th, 25th of next month.
But essentially, they took a service log that they used to run the route, and then they gave us a billing based on where we told them there was city water, and they want the higher of the two amounts, essentially.
Somewhat, but not necessarily.
Essentially.
Yeah, essentially.
Bad curiosity, we could beat this thing in the ground.
Yeah.
Curiosity in regards to bad debt, and I saw we have a line item on that for water and sewer. Who assumes the bad debt on
Okay.
trash pickup.
Okay,
It's
we
on water and
do.
sewer.
We do because in the contract, all monies or charges to customers has to be, inland has to be paid first. We, whatever they don't pay. We have to pay. If they don't pay, they're still charged, and they're charging the city.
Okay.
They're,
We only pay what's collected.
yeah, what's collected.
Right, but if they pay a partial bill.
The partial,
we have
it
to
all goes
apply
to
it
them.
the trash.
Yeah,
Before it
has-
goes to property.
everything has to be applied to them first.
I guess my question is this, and we're a long ways from this being rectified. What is, based on the fact that trash is on our water and sewer bill, what is that a benefit to the city, percentage-wise,
We get about almost $30,000
annually?
annually. If-
I guess
you know,
my question,
cover-
I look at this and the rat race we're dealing with these folks right now.
Believe you me, that little question that you just asked has been discussed.
Because to me, 30 grand is not worth it.
But
They can build it themselves and they can pick up the trash. I mean, I realize what we're talking about here, and we're kind of in an open conversation, so. But based on the session we just had in regards to money for a city shop, and now we're saying, and they're trying to bill us for $400,000 because you and I talked about it. It was nice to pick up the paper and say, Inland said we own 400 grand. But it's almost worth taking off the water and sewer and let them build it themselves. And it's just me. I mean,
Okay.
it's to me, is that $30,000 really worth it?
well,
If they can't get their act straight, and that's what it amounts to.
It's in the contract.
I understand, but if they cannot get their act straight, that 30 grand isn't worth it to me.
It's worth it to them.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
not talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the 15,000 people that live inside the city limits of Harrison and the businesses that are here, because we have to provide a service. Not really, we provide the contract, they provide the
We
service.
have a traditional duty
Big
for
deal,
them.
big deal.
That's all they got.
But it's just, it's not good.
but when from a history, way back when I was in your chair, the history of that got all that going, used to, you were billed your trash separately. The city didn't do that.
Right.
Problem is, the trash people, when you make it mandatory that everyone has to have trash service, the trash people don't have any recourse if the individuals don't pay their bill. They don't have any recourse to where it is now. You wouldn't get anybody to bid on your service if the city was not involved as far as shutting off water because people are not paying their trash bill. Right now, if they don't pay their trash bill and they don't pay their water bill, the water gets shut off. If you didn't have,
Does the trash stop?
huh?
Does the trash stop?
If the city notifies them, and tells them. But but that would be the biggest problem. You would have a hard time finding a vendor that would take it on without that.
I just don't like the operation.
Oh, I agree.
I'll just cut to the chase. I do not like the operation. I didn't like it when I was not on the city council. I don't like it now.
Could you send us an email? We see where you're coming from.
Yeah, from the very first meeting from the city council, Inland came up. And, here we are, and I get email pictures 2 days ago about more trash bins, turning into Rosettas. And it's like, and I realize that, this is a contract deal, it's a legal issue, it's a find the problem. I don't like it.
But if you're a citizen of the community, the city provides the trash service. Inland is providing it as, we're basically subcontracting, obviously. But it's our responsibility to get it right, so,
Still don't like it.
yeah.
I'm just telling you, I don't like it. And I don't know if my dislike is for Inland or if my dislike is for the fact that we put a local company out of business. And I'm not going to go any farther than that. I'm going to leave it alone because that's still does not sit well with me.
Well, my issue is that citizens are having a problem with their service that we're responsible for.
Bingo.
And we
But the
can't seem
service
to-
did not get better.
No, and we can't seem to solve it easily. And the person we contracted to feels like they've been wronged and that they're due money. I asked Luke, how much of this do we really owe? And I asked this when I first got on council because it came up then. And he said, all we do is give them what they tell us to bill. So if it's wrong, it's, I don't know how much it's wrong because they dropped off all these canisters and said, we have X number of canisters times this price, and we're not getting that money. Well, who is it that we're not billing? We don't know. Inland tells us we don't know who it is. You go find out. Well, it's not our job to find out who they should be getting money from. So I'm concerned in a business environment, you'd have a reserve for what we think we owe. I don't believe Mr. Mayor Luke has ever come up with an amount that he thinks we might actually owe because
Yeah, we're getting close. There's 500.
well, I don't want to put him on the spot.
Well, I don't mind this. This part we've done already.
Okay.
I think there's 534. Don't get me wrong. My quotes probably might be off 10 or 15 on this. Commercial customers within the boundaries of in the service in our city.
And is this wherein lies the real
Yes.
problem?
Yes. Okay, they finally sent us last week what they said, or 2 weeks ago, an accurate pickup law. Am I wording that right?
Well, I think that's what it was now. I mean, it's, they gave Luke an actual, I guess, a billing that listed
The
Owner,
size,
the location,
owner,
size,
location, how many times they pick up a week and everything. Okay. He started when he got that, and he's been, bless his heart, he has contacted everybody on that list. There's 160 discrepancies.
Already.
30%. He sent out that many emails to those discrepancies, those people. So there's where we're standing right now on that.
Those emails went to Inland.
Yeah, and those in
116.
And that's good. I'm glad.
Not to the people.
No, I understand.
like, one little thing, I'll just have to throw it out. On their bill, they're billing the city of Harrison. Okay, on the contract, city of Harrison's free. But there is some that we found, they got dumpsters that are picking up, those people are not being billed. So,
But if it's included in their water bill,
okay, this is commercial.
oh, commercial.
Commercial,
okay.
yeah,
It-
commercial separate.
Yeah. But that,
Bill is separate.
believe you me,
They
it's
bill those
something
different.
that,
Are they considering commercial the
Commercial.
big dumpsters only?
are they said what now?
Are they considering commercial the large dumpsters only?
Okay, there's,
No.
Okay.
roll-offs are totally separate, everything. They bill only, they do that billing.
They do that themselves.
They do that themselves.
But we build the commercial.
Yes.
The
Yes.
city builds the commercial.
Wait, did I leave any of that out since you were at the meeting?
I don't think so. One of the big issues one of the things that kind of struck me the most in that meeting was we gave them the list of the customers that we were billing at the start of the contract. That was provided by the finance department to Inland. They went and got a list of stuff from Methven and set containers based off of that without ever giving us an audit back saying, well, this is what we've set. So from the get-go, they were setting stuff that we weren't billing and not telling us. It's kind of, I guess that was a big thing I picked up on over the meeting.
Yep.
So should we ask any citizen that's not getting billed for trash to notify us?
Okay, that question was actually brought up. And they asked us if somebody had not been billed for the trash, would you bill them? And I said, yeah, we will bill them. We will bill them. But we're not gonna shut the water off. Is there some,
Back where you put it down.
I don't think it's gonna be, and Luke says it's not gonna be very many. gonna be minute, believe it or not.
Okay. That's what he expressed to me, but he couldn't put a figure on it.
Yeah, he does not have that
He
figure.
doesn't want to do that until he's got
That's
firm
right.
numbers.
And believe you me, it's been a nightmare for him.
I'm just so confused at the fact that I just can't believe that we owe them, quote, quote, more than what we take in for them, quote, quote. Does that make sense? And that's kind of what we're dealing with. It does not soak through this brain in any way.
We take in a little bit more. We do.
Well, but I understand, but there is no way of what we take in, we have to pay them more than what we take in.
Well, his comment that the first month, they said there was a problem with what, I would be, if I was them, I'd be stepping into my accounting office and say, can anybody explain this?
Yep.
Has anybody called them and see why we're short?
If it was me, I'd have people on the ground right now counting cans.
Well, that's been brought up since I've been here, at least 2 times. You're in those meetings, weren't you?
No.
We've
How
asked-
many meetings have
We've
they
asked-
canceled?
Oh, I don't, yeah.
I think that's equally as important, because Dan and I discussed this. How many meetings did they cancel?
2. Well,
Trying
one
to-
that didn't show up, one that just didn't show up, period, and one they did call.
What about the service issues that we've notified them about?
We're following up on that.
But
Should
I
say
mean,
we got that.
They had, a length of time, they contend that they
Okay.
had satisfied those. before.
What we're actually doing, the list we sent them on complaints, I may say complaints. We are going back and calling every one of those people that's on that list and asking them, is your service been rectified or solved? Which they say it's been. How'd they word that? Solved?
Everything was good.
Everything was good.
3 days after they got it certified.
Is that what they told you then?
Basically said they've resolved those problems and moved right into the financial part of it.
Do they need more emails?
Pardon?
Do they need more emails? I'll be
Does
glad
the
to
city
say.
need them?
City doesn't.
I mean, I'll be glad. I'm sure
City
everybody got the same one I got. Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, we have not documented until about 2 months ago.
I understand. Oh, I-
Maybe some of my fault, we should have probably been documented from day one, but I had to send a message out to all departments, if you have any contact with Ellen, it will be in writing. And guess what? We have not, my assistant and I bet every morning, we don't bet any money, if we'll get it caught.
How many days have you missed?
And missed a day.
That's what I figured. I figured it would be easier to say how many days have you missed and how many days have you got caught.
Today was the last. We only got 2.
I know, a lady today, she mentioned that they had not picked up
Well,
trash out and
those
something
issues,
else. And I said,
we'll have to work
call
hard
the mayor.
from our office and to Van's office, and we're working on it. Okay. Any council got anything?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Tomorrow from 10 to 2, I'm having open house at my office, 702 North Main Street. If you want to come and eat a cookie with me, you're more than welcome.
Is there food involved?
There's food involved. There is.
What time are you going to get there, Bill?
You know, that's on TV, you know.
I know, that's fine.
Okay.
Everybody can come.
Got to go to Ponca in the morning.
Well, thank you.
You'll be back by 2, won't you?
Thank you
You
for
get the
the
left
information.
over.
You'll turn around and go back to Ponca too.
Virginia, thank you for the cards, too.
I just wanted to.
Anybody else? Anybody else from the council got anything?
And everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Amen.
Okay, does anybody in the audience have anything? Oh, Mr. John Neal.
Just a moment. I appreciate your enthusiastic conversation about the budget items. I think they're good, and I think you're going to find. I can see where I was sitting there going, "That's not going to get resolved," but I think where you're looking for some numbers and they're not there yet. You're going to find them, and you'll make adjustments accordingly. I'm kind of convinced of that after the interaction. And I appreciated that. Real quick, I'm here, I didn't dress up for y'all, I'm going to dinner at Sonic when I get done, so I just.
That's your
dress
one
up.
suit?
That's
That's the only one you got?
That's the only one I have. I just walk around with I put a clean shirt on. I have one that I smoke meat in, and I do this from here. But the thing I'm coming back to, I understand you're going to pass the budget, and I've been talking to firefighters, some police officers. You know, they haven't been divulging any secrets you have there, Chief. But the bottom line is, I think in January, after passing the budget here, I think you're going to have to come back and address what I spoke of before, and that is the pay structure. At that time, you will have something in front of you for you to review over a period of time to see where, so we can allocate the funds that are properly from that tax to be allocated for proper pay increases in the fire and police department. And I just wanted that to be said, that I think any budget can be amended, and it doesn't have to be before the budget is passed. It can be done after the budget is passed. So I think that's important. And when you get the numbers about the other issue, I think you'll find that you're a little high, but maybe not. I'm just doing numbers in my head for what it was when I was chief in the fire department, and the police always got a bigger fleet, and that's just a little bit higher budget. But the bottom line is, I just want you to know that I think everybody can live with that as long as you come back in January and take a look at the pay with something in front of you over a period of time to see where we can get adjusted on that. So I had to say thank you and Merry Christmas to everybody.
I just have one question. Does Parks have their own budget?
Yes, I do, ma'am.
Why are they not getting allocated money out of the city shop too? Wade stated that they use the city shop as well, and why do they not have allocation if city, fire, police, and water and sewer, water has to pay? Why do Parks not have to pay part of the shop budget as well?
Well, I don't think we actually know, I'll say this, how much anybody's using that shop, which we're going to start doing. I don't know.
Yeah, but
How
if
much
fire's
would
only
you-
using it at 1%, excuse me.
Would you go down there, how much would you think you use, Chuck?
Not very much.
Well, I mean, you take one down a year or something like that, or?
I think we've been down there.
You get fuel.
We get fuel all. that's what we
Yeah,
got
if
fuel.
fire's
Okay.
only using it 1% and they're getting allocated 10% out of their budget,
Okay.
why, if they're only using it
You gotta get
0.5%, why is Parks not getting allocated at least 5%?
You got a good point.
I think we use our fuel, we don't use the shop or against y'all. So.
If mostly they're using just fuel.
Yeah, but my understanding, like what Mr. Magnus said, was if that canopy was to fall on that gas,
It's everything within that lot, so absolutely. If they're using it, they should get an allocation.
Yeah, they get an allocation.
Unless that is negligible to the point where administration of it isn't worth the cost. You know, if it were to come out based on what they're using it, let's say it's $500 a year, it may not be worth the time of putting that in as a
Yeah.
line item.
what did Brian, how much did you add up that fire was only using, what, 1,800 a year?
I don't think it was even that much, based
Yeah.
on just what they've taken out of the shop.
Yeah, but they're getting 10% of their budget taken out, even though all their fire trucks are going to Conway to get repairs on, except the one that's in the city shop right now. But respectively, I mean, if it's only going at 1% last year, then it probably maybe go up to 3% this year. And if the Parks and Recs are using it 1%, where city was using, I mean, fire was using it last year at 1%, I think Parks and Recs should be paying 5% and fire should be paying 5%.
Well, I think it should be based on like you're saying, allocation. And anytime you do these allocations, I've never done one that someone didn't say, hold it just a second, I'm getting shafted here.
Yeah.
Whether you base it on the labor rate for that department or square footage or the overall, I've had them, that's the overall expense, so you take everybody's expense and divide that out. And every time there's some group that says,
Yeah.
But-
And even if that helps water, I mean, if fire's using it 10%, then by all means let fire pay 10%. But if water's not using it the 68% that they're paying, then Park and Rec should pick up their pieces and pick up their part.
Everybody should.
If they're going to be using it, even just for gas, like you said, if the canopy was to fall, then everyone needs to pay to replace that canopy.
If a pump hose has to be replaced, everybody should pay their fair share.
Well, just like they said, the CVB is going to be allocated their portion too. So it's not, all of the
Yeah,
departments.
well, the budget that I understood, it was 10% coming from fire, 22% coming from police, and 68% coming from water. I didn't hear Park and Rec's paying any out of their budget.
And so, Parks and Rec is looked at just a little bit differently in the budget process because they get a lump sum. It's not broke out. They get and it's a good point, just so you know, they get a lump sum of money. We don't necessarily say, we don't break it down for them by line item, how they're gonna spend it.
We give them an allocation that is one line item.
Check. And that's gonna be a good point, it's a good question to look at, because if we need to turn around then, we'll have to change the
We
process.
can't, all we can do is give Parks and Rec an allocation. We can change that based on, we can say, okay, we're gonna adjust that allocation based on your usage. But we can only give them, they have to be independent. For example, everything that Parks and Rec does has to have no influence from council. So to make them independent, we can only give them that money as a lump sum. We can review their budget. We can't make any changes or recommendations. It has to go through their commission.
And then if we come back and we determine that they owe, let's say they owe 3%,
Mhm.
are they gonna cut us a check?
I think the only thing you can do because of the law is charge them per service like you would have.
That's what I'm saying, do we come
Yeah.
back, and I asked them, they still get their $500,000.
They'd have to pay the
And
city
then,
back.
bottom line is, the shop's gonna have to track whatever goes through down there, and they're gonna have to cut the city a check.
They would have to
That's
reimburse just like they do.
Actual cash money's gonna come back to the city.
Right.
You see what we're doing? So, yeah, that falls on them more so than it does on us.
I just felt like everyone that uses a shop should
You
have to be
got a good
allocated money.
point.
That's a good point.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? That being said, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Be safe,
See you
have a
tomorrow.
good holiday.
See you tomorrow.